TVOT. Hi, I'm Geoff Katz. I work at Related Content Database. That's the RCDb that you'll see around. And I'm going to be the moderator of this masterclass. That is funny that Tracy called it a masterclass. It was a workshop. It's more than a commercial for RCDb, though. I think you're going to see some stuff today that will really help shape a vision about what we think interactive television is becoming. We've got a great group of people here and a really focused demonstration to help illustrate what we're doing. A bit of it is a story, and the story is playing out around us every day when you read your blogs about the phenomenon that we're seeing around people doing things while they're watching television. And it's a story that started in the early 90s. But at that time, it was really a story about what you were going to do in your living room with your remote pointed at the big screen, or at that time, the 36-inch big screen that was in your living room. And had a couple of runs at that, actually, in the 90s. I think with the rise of DVD, consumer adoption of electronic programming guides on TV, we're finally at a point where this idea of doing more than one thing while you're watching TV is pretty common. What the story's evolved with recently, though, is how do you extend the television programming? Not really how do you check Facebook or how do you surf the web or how do you do your email while you watch TV, but what are the kinds of experiences that can take you deeper? And today we're going to show a prototype application called Watch with eBay. The Watch with eBay prototype, Marc is going to talk about in a lot more detail, so I won't steal his thunder too much. But it's an idea that while you're having this companion experience, that the companion experience is actually happening kind of on a screen that's in your lap, maybe a tablet like an iPad or an Android tablet. And so we've kind of moved away from a consistent vision of interactive TV, meaning let's add a layer to the television, let's cover up the programming, to really kind of offloading that to a companion device. We were at Tracy's TVOT in New York in the fall, and we did a similar kind of a workshop, but in that workshop, the thing that connected the tablet experience to the iPad app was actually an eBiff app. And that is part of the RCDb offering, and Doug is showing it downstairs. Where the discussion and the story that we've all been reading out in the press is really around this idea of over-the-top automatic content recognition. How can the TV be on? How can you have your iPad, and how can it, automatically figure out what you're watching and start to deliver a synced experience? And some of us have used the old reliable, well, people just sync themselves up. I'm watching Top Chef, I go to the Top Chef iPad app while it's on, and it magically works. And you're starting to see that there are competing technologies in the marketplace trying to kind of bring solutions around automatic content recognition. So today's story is really about how, together, RCDb has been working with eBay, and in this case, Gracenote, to provide the automatic content recognition. And with a programming partner like Christina Waage from The Bold and the Beautiful, we're going to show you an example of how this all can come together into what hopefully you'll take away as something that takes us a giant step beyond checking into a show while you're watching television, which is kind of fun, and you can get badges and maybe stickers. But I think that has a kind of a short lifespan, the check-in stuff. Hopefully what you'll see today is a vision of how web services can really drive the thing that happens after the sync happens. I'll introduce myself briefly. I'm the executive producer at Related Content Database. We have a platform, but we also do professional services. So I manage the professional services engagements with our big partners. But I'll let the other folks introduce themselves very briefly. We're going to have a chance to showcase their talents up front here. But Doug Clarke is also here.
RCDb as well. I'm the director of embedded software, so kind of manage the products that are embedded into connected TV, in this case iPad and other connected experiences.
Thanks, Doug. Stephen White's here from Gracenote.
Hey everybody, I'm Stephen White. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product and Content Management at Gracenote. I manage all of our products.
Marc Hosein.
Marc Hosein, Director of Platform Business Solutions for eBay. I'm actually part of the mobile team, and I run the incubator for new businesses. Connected devices like televisions and gaming consoles are a natural next step for us.
And last but not least, Christina
Waage
Waage.
from The Bold and Beautiful, and I run global sales, domestic and global sales for our show.
Christina is both bold and beautiful, so she's representing both sides of the business here today. So before we jump into the first demo, this Watch with eBay idea is an early version. It's not a release project. We're not pre-announcing. Marc's not pre-announcing. It's a prototype app. So I want to make that clear with you guys. But it's taken a lot of work. What we're going to illustrate here is how a developer, eBay, can work with some technology partners like Gracenote and RCDb to bring user experience that adds value to TV programming. Actually, before we get into Marc's part, why don't we give you guys a demo of what we're talking about? I think I can go backwards, but maybe not. Doug, do you want to start the demo up here?
Yeah, sure. So we actually going to go into it?
Yeah, I think so, because then we'll unwind what you guys see, and I think it'll help you understand a little bit about how it was built.
So for those of you who saw us in New York, we had this Watch with eBay app that was eBIF based, where the code came up on the screen from your set-top box, you registered the set-top box, and then it actually fed information as to what programming is happening and when it was happening. But now what we're showing is something a little more automatic, leveraging Gracenote's audio recognition, so that we can actually just listen to what's actually happening and then synchronize the experience on the iPad that way. Of course, it's the end of the program here, but it does loop. So if I just turn on the audio here and then hit the listen button. So what this is doing is it's a client piece on the iPad that's actually recording a little bit of sample. And Stephen could talk a little more about this. I'm not exactly totally sure about what's happening, but because it is a little magical. But Stephen, actually, do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Sure, so what it's doing right now is it's fingerprinting the audio. This is all audio-based fingerprinting. And what it's doing is it's taking small 3-second samples of the audio, transforming those into a fingerprint or string of numbers, setting those up to the server, and then recognizing what show it is that we're watching.
And we're going to both pass around the iPad, and we're also going to project the experience. So what they're doing right now is just grabbing the initial sync.
So it's important to note that one of the key parts to making this work is that the recognition doesn't only come back with the information about the show, it also comes back with the timing information of where in the show we've identified, which then helps RCDb sync that into their platform of all of this rich related content that they'll show you as soon as they sync here.
We learned a lot about soap operas doing this project. One of them was that there's a lot of like silent parts.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
I'm going to check my connection. Of course, it has to be connected to actually identify the show as well.
It is going live out over the network to the servers. Live demos, always fun.
Yeah.
How many people have used automatic content recognition on iPad apps, like the Into Now experience, for example?
Obviously, I haven't been doing a very good job.
People are pretty familiar with it.
I've never failed anything in my life, Katie, and I'm not going to fail at this. I'm going to make us whole again. I just need you to promise me one thing.
What?
Don't close off on me. I know what I need to do.
You don't
double
watch
check
The
the
Bold and
connection
Beautiful every day, you
Have something
should.
in mind.
important thing for ACR to work is that you got to be connected to the internet so it can actually find it. So that's what we learned.
So now it's synced?
Yeah, now it's synced.
Okay.
And so
the
basically-
video is going to continue to loop.
Should I just pass this around
Yeah, I
and then
think
Marc
you
can do the same
you
thing?
can pass it around. Marc is going to project it on the big board. But what you're basically seeing is after the sync is established, there's a level of data created around the show, and it's metadata that we call frame level time data. And the time data is, we'll go into a little bit more detail about it, but it's actually the actors and the products that are in the show. And what's happening is that it's using that data to do real-time access to the eBay web services and return search results from eBay. Marc, I think, is going to try and get it up on the big screen. We've got both of the tablets synced. And so as the show plays out, the companion experience in this case is real-time eBay searches based on the products that are actually available in the show that would allow an interested soap opera viewer to chase some of these things down. Do you have it going, Marc? Yeah. So we'll let it just run out for a second. We're also continuing to pass one around so that you can see it a little bit closer.
So what you actually see here is there's some RCDb, what we call time data. We have a database that shows moment by moment, second by second, all the actors on the screen, the scene you're in, the products on the screen. In this case, we actually are in cooperation with Bold and the Beautiful and their wardrobe department because this show, and Christina could talk a little more about this, is really based around fashion, the fashion industry. And the fashions, the clothing, the jewelry, the accessories is really the focus of the show, and for the viewer, what they're engaging around. And so in this case, working with the wardrobe department and putting that data into the related content database to drive this experience is having that product data directly make calls to eBay to pull what auctions may be available related to those specific products.
So as the video loops around from the end here, the only time data in at the end is actually Hollywood, California. So it's pulling up sometimes some humorous Hollywood eBay searches. But you'll see as the end titles credits roll around, as the show starts back up again, you'll see it sync. And so, the idea, I think, sometimes people are demanding too much of the audience in terms of interaction, right? The idea that we could add polls or quizzes or the ability to do a Facebook shout out or a tweet, it's all stuff that you could build into the app experience. This one's focused on a real companion. And you'll see as the scenes change, not that often in this loop, but the actors' information about who's on screen, and the products continue to update. All right, so we'll continue to pass it around, but can we switch back over to the other input? Marc, can you grab that? Marc, you've got the audience circled. You can come up and talk a little bit about eBay next. Yep. It's HDMI.
So really, the reason I'm here is to give eBay's perspectives on T-commerce. You guys may know eBay's the largest online marketplace. We have 94 million users in 39 different markets.
Hey, Marc, you can take the spotlight.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, please.
Sure, why not? So I can see my friend Rachel. So we do about 60 billion in volume every year at eBay. And the reason we think eBay is uniquely positioned to enable T-commerce is that we have over 220 million listings across 50,000 categories. So if you're watching TV and you see a Chevy Bolt or some antique piece of jewelry or everything in between, you can find that on eBay. Now our mobile business is growing gangbusters. I mentioned I'm part of the mobile team. So we did $2 billion in gross merchandise volume. That's the value of the goods sold through mobile in 2010. We're going to double that this year. And the reason mobile's growing so quickly is because people are inspired to purchase wherever they are. So if you're in the line at Starbucks, or you're at the kids' soccer game on the weekend, or at the ballpark, you're inspired to purchase. we believe that the same is true when you're watching 5 to 6 hours of television a day. And we know that T-commerce has been around for a while. There's been a lot of focus on one-screen T-commerce, which has very interesting use cases. In fact, my friends at PayPal are working closely with some of the service providers to really streamline that payment process. But there's certain use cases where one screen doesn't make sense. So say you're watching the Giants play. You're not going to pop a stadium over the game to pick your seats, at AT&T Park to pick your seats to purchase on StubHub, another eBay property, right? You're not going to, cycle through many permutations of size, color, quantity on the screen. It's an unwieldy experience. So we think the advent of the two-screen experience is something that's new and unique. Many of you probably saw the Yahoo Nielsen study that said 86% of mobile internet users watch TV simultaneously while they're using their mobile devices, and it's 92% for 13 to 24-year-olds, and a quarter of those folks are surfing content relevant to what they're watching on the screen. So that's really a case for T-commerce, right? Christine tells us that her viewers are constantly, when they're watching Bold and the Beautiful, asking, how do I get those outfits? Where can I find those? And eBay is one of the places where you can find those. So for certain programs like sports, right, it's relatively easy to surface relevant content, right? If we know the teams, we know what league you're playing, right? We can easily feed that into our eBay search. The demo you see here is just our standard eBay search capability. If we get to, Don Draper's suit, right, and you want to know in a particular scene where did that suit come from, or Gossip Girl, or Bold and the Beautiful, then we need some contextually relevant metadata, and that's where partners like RCDb come in, because that data is tough to get, right? How do we get that time-synchronized metadata so that we can merch you something the time you see it on the screen, and you can purchase it or save it for later? And so that's where we think things are going, and we're lucky to have partners like this to work with. And thanks for coming to see this.
Thanks, Marc.
Yep.
So Doug, maybe you could talk about the platform very briefly. I'm going to switch over in a second and show actually the frame level metadata running in the background.
So what we're actually working with RCDb is we are a over-the-top IP metadata platform already. We've been in the business for a long time, mostly servicing Blu-ray, now connected TV, iPad, eBIF, OCAP, different experiences. And so another part of our business has been the collection of this rich metadata as well. So working with content providers, we create on a second-by-second basis, like I said, things like scene definition, music, products, actors, locations, things like that. And so now, in this year, we're really starting to kind of marry the two together, to take that interactive VOD experience, or in this case, even a broadcast experience or live TV experience, really any kind of content consumption experience, and being able to layer in that database, which then enables partners like eBay or any other retailer or anyone who wants to sell something or advanced advertising to be able to use those hooks to hook into the content and have a very rich, deep contextual experience, which is where we think that the kind of next generation advertising has to actually happen. And so what we're looking at here is this is part of our actual web-based suite of tools that we use to expose a lot of the raw metadata that we collect on our side. And so what we're actually looking at is an augmented layer on top of just a playback preview tool, where this is the kind of resolution of data that we have. In this case, working with the Bold and the Beautiful wardrobe department, we know that his dress shirt comes from Banana Republic, and there's different layers of contextual metadata there. So what we do with this is we actually work with the content owner like Bold and the Beautiful to approve, enhance, and then start mapping their databases of existing metadata into this timeline, so that together the content owner and RCDB can come to the augmented layer and then present very rich contextual metadata for application consumption.
So you'll see as the show continues to play out, and we'll let it go. This is the opening credits scene right now. That there's two types of data that are starting to be displayed. As Doug said, this is part of a tool set. This isn't a user experience. I personally think it's kind of cool, like an augmented layer of detail about video, but then people say, oh, well, of course you do, you live in San Francisco and you work in the technology business. But what it's intended to do is for the intellectual property owner to actually go back and kind of review and approve the foundation layer of data. And when we talk about foundation layer, you'll see that it's specifically the actors and portrayals, the products and that are showing up. As we go through the presentation, you'll see that the foundation layer can then be augmented with extended metadata. It might be locations, it might be music, it could be specific product placement. So it doesn't just have to be the products that happen to show up. We could definitely surface things that people pay to be in the show. And then there's even another layer of metadata that really only the show creators could provide. This show's been on the air for almost 30 years now, so the history of any one of these characters that's on the screen at any time is relatively complex, somewhat incestuous, but the literally, or maybe not. I don't want to speak badly about the Bold and Beautiful, but it's possible that in addition to the kind of experience that we're showing with Watch with eBay, there could just be contextual cues that help people catch up with what's going on in any story. I think we all saw Lost come to an end last year, and we met Carlton Cuse right after the final Lost broadcast. He was the Lost creator. As they repeated the show leading up to the finale, there was a Saturday night broadcast that actually showed contextual metadata baked into the broadcast. And he was like, damn, we did all that work, we were in the studio, and now it's just tied to that one version of that episode. The idea here, I think, is that we're providing a platform that can kind of abstract that out of any one instance of the show and make it available to app developers. And what I want all you guys to take away is that RCDb is not the app developer here. eBay is the app developer. You guys are the app developer. And I think the challenge is, beyond check-in, starting to think of this type of contextual metadata is available. What kind of experiences can I build? And I think you can fast forward all the way down to user-generated contextual data that could get added to the shows that we watch. So I've let this play out for a bit. I'll go back to our slideshow and our presenters for a second. But you can see how rich it is on a scene-by-scene basis. So Doug, do you want to kind of unwind the multiple layers of?
Sure. I mean, we already talked about this a little bit, but this is a little bit more of an illustration. What we call foundation data is just what is available for, I think we have about, close to 2,000 different movies and TV shows already kind of in our database right now. That is scene, definition, product, actor. And then Geoff talked about this extended layer. What that is it's a model where we can kind of put different kinds of abstract events that are actually going to be important for different types of content. There could be a show like we did a demo at TVOT New York. We were doing Hawaii 5.0 content. Of course, the location there is very important. Different parts of the island that they're at, and that could feed different location-relevant experiences. And then when we're talking about studio content, this is where working with these different content owners, like the Bold and the Beautiful, they have very rich context about their characters, their storylines, very rich data about the fashions that they're actually bringing forward in the context of their episodes. And then this is where, in the same database, we can maintain that ownership from the content owner, but on a technical platform level, actually integrate that into a feed that is filtered for different kinds of client experiences dynamically.
Good. So I think we're almost. Come on, you can do it. We're ready to hear a little more from Stephen White from Gracenote about the role that we played. So just very briefly, the time data, the web services that distribute it, Marc's providing access to the eBay e-commerce listings. We provided an SDK for the app developers, but none of it would happen without Gracenote's technology helping us recognize what the viewer was actually watching.
So hey everybody, I'm Steven. For those of you that don't know Gracenote, we're a technology and services provider If you look at RCDb as the foundational elements here, I guess we're the makers of the concrete. We're a B2B provider, and we provide media recognition technologies as one of our core offerings. You probably know us best for our CD recognition technologies that power iTunes. The fingerprinting technologies here can be very broadly applied. Everything from recognizing the content that you have locally in your own collection through to use cases like this where we're recognizing live streaming content being broadcast over the television. There's a lot of work that goes into the systems that sit underneath this, a lot of challenges to how you acquire the content, how you make that content available in these real-time recognition clusters. Our goal is to be able to recognize any content anywhere in the world. So there's a massive infrastructure here. Today we support about 5 billion queries a month against the Gracenote infrastructure. So it's a telco grade infrastructure that supports all of this. The amount of content that's in the system is massive. Today it's about 90 million songs and over 250,000 TV shows and movies on a global basis. We're actively working to expand that to be able to cover anything, anywhere. So if any of you that are working on content recognition dependent solutions, we've got an answer for you, and there's very broad deployments that you can use in terms of how you deploy that content recognition, whether it be SDKs you want to put in devices, web services hitting hosted systems, and everywhere in between. So we're very happy to see what the RCDb, eBay, and Bold and Beautiful teams have put together here. It's a great example of some of the things that you can do built on top of that underlying Gracenote technology.
Hey, Stephen, could you unwind the difference between fingerprinting like we're doing here and the kind of watermarking that you guys are supporting like in the Nielsen Media Sync app?
Sure. So, just so you know, Gracenote does have broad involvement in this kind of ACR space. In addition to our own fingerprinting work, we've also built the back-end systems in conjunction with Nielsen Crosstalk, which is a joint venture between Nielsen and Digimarc. That solution uses watermarking. And the difference between fingerprinting and watermarking is fingerprinting really takes, here, an audio signal, processes that audio signal through an algorithm, and comes up with a signature that is unique to that piece of audio. Watermarking, there's various different technologies around watermarking, but watermarking inserts a code into the actual programming that can then be read and decoded by an application. Both are very applicable depending on what you're doing for ACR, automatic content recognition. That's why we're big believers in supporting both. If you're a content provider, you're actually creating the content, such as the Bold and the Beautiful. You may choose to use watermarking because it gives you a lot of granular control over what you're actually broadcasting. The watermarking technologies from Crosstalk and from Civolution and other providers in the market allow you to not only tell you what show this is, what time, what area of the show they're in, but also what station was it broadcast on, which helps you in terms of the local information about which market is this being broadcast in. You could do a lot of interesting things there about advertising then to support your local markets. Fingerprinting is a little more generic. We know what it is. We can tell you exactly in the show where it is, but that's all we can tell you. So that's the big difference between the two.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stephen. We're going to have a chance to ask questions to all the panel members, but first I'm going to get through the group that's here. Christina, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the show and the other Bell Phillips productions. And
I'm not going to tell you about the show. I'm going to tell you this actually is a product that we really, I would say, we need. We currently catalog all of our wardrobe, all of our props, everything on paper or on people's memories, or we have to go in and find the things. So with RCDb, if we started right now tagging everything at post-production, it would be a huge help for us because we sell this product on DVD, we sell it online, we sell it everywhere. So this solves us needing to move out of 1987. It also is something our viewers have been asking for since the show launched in 1987. They've been writing us. They take up a lot of time with our junior staff trying to answer their questions about where we bought things. So we know people want it. It also will help me keep, hopefully, our viewers off the second screen and onto our site, because we really stress this out, as all TV people do, when you think they're watching your show but reading the Daily Mail or Facebooking or something, we want them on a second screen related to us. And also it's going to help us with advertising. CBS, very often we own our own show. CBS also is beginning to more and more ask us for product placement, which is a little bit annoying, but we can go in there and we can say, okay, we'll do it, and then we can tag it, and then your advertiser, if it's V8 or if it's Armani or whoever, can be tagged online as well, which will actually help us get a second view of our show, because then we will drive viewers to online, saying, if you want the answer to this question as to what show it is or what product it is, go to cbs.com, which in the end will make us happier because we will sell our show to CBS again. So for us, it's a very natural product that we've been trying to look at for years with Seen on TV, which didn't work, with answering people, with Facebook, which didn't work, and I think this might actually be the solution.
Thanks, Christina. Again, back to the point of what will developers do once resources like real-time metadata are available. I think what we're starting to learn is, it's a complicated chain of control from the people that create the show and own it, people that license it for distribution across various windows. The people in the television business have network operators that are trying to monetize content. But fundamentally, I think if we can go far back in the production process like we were able to do logistically with the props and wardrobe people, if Christina makes this investment in time to do this once, it can basically, be used in Watch with eBay very successfully. But there'll be other apps that folks like you actually develop that can consume it as well. And so it's kind of this idea that, if they do it right once, the first time, that they'll be able to exploit it on different platforms with different partners moving forward into the future. So the quick recap, and maybe we can switch back to, or is the iPad still moving around? Did everybody see the iPad experience? Or Doug, do you want to claim that and make sure that it's still going? It's a very, very collaborative process. I mean, we've been really happy to work with eBay and Gracenote and Bold and Beautiful to put it together. But it's somebody like me as a producer that actually has to wrangle all the forces to make it happen. And Doug had mentioned we're up to about 2,000 classic movies right now. Movies are kind of interesting in their back catalog. You can go through them, you can get to Gold Master time data on them, and then they basically don't change. What we're starting to learn is even programs like the episode that we're showing here today, we're kind of trying to make do with something that's already in the can. And so we've gone from back catalog to something that's relatively new. The big challenge now for us, especially with television, is kind of closing that gap up to first run broadcast. And there's a lot of production, workflow, logistics, not only with the show creators, but with the technology providers, and obviously you guys as app developers to bring this compelling application. So it's really a kind of a learning experience for all of us right now. The last thing that I really want to talk about is really kind of why it's important to everyone. And honestly, it's Christina and Marc, I think, that can kind of put a dot on that I or cross that T. Because ultimately, the experience that RCDb and Gracenote help power is something that's going to drive business for these guys. So, Marc, can you swing back around and try and encapsulate it?
Sure. Again, it's about inspiration to purchase, and we believe people are inspired to purchase when they're watching television, and we believe we can enhance the viewer's experience without disrupting it with this two-screen capability. And it's technology and content partners like this that'll enable us to do this.
Christina, anything you want to
It's
add?
all about viewer stickiness. Once you get a viewer, especially us, we're a soap opera, we're on every day, we're in 250 episodes a year, 125 hours. So we want them to stay with us. And so once they start thinking about us and knowing that they could stay on our website or our partner eBay website and find out anything about background on the actors, who a lot of them are obsessive about, background on the product, or actually there's a lot of different ways that we could morph this product out. So it's just about retaining that viewer, because as everybody knows, you've got to not forget, you got to keep getting them every day, not take it for granted.
Yeah, I think, RCDb came at this as a developer, really. After years of trying to build interactive experiences on different platforms, it always came back to what do you hang that experience off of? And Zane Vella, who's the CEO here, and you can meet him or see him on a panel at 2 o'clock, actually kind of realized that without that frame level metadata, that it was really hard to add a compelling user experience around most programming. And so, coming out of Blu-ray, moving into connected TV and tablet apps, I think, our trajectory over the rest of this year is to start to show what these frame level data enhanced user experiences can be across multiple platforms. But with that, it's kind of the overall story. I would like to use a little bit of the rest of our time to really try and address any specific questions that you folks have. Yes, please.
What's the business model behind it? I think for eBay it's quite obvious, I think, but for the other partners in the project, I'm quite curious at what the motivation is there,
Right.
Money-wise.
Yeah. Well, since we do have Zane, you might want to talk about the RCDb business model, but Stephen, do you want to talk about it for a second from Gracenote's point of view?
Gracenote employs a technology licensing and services model, so we license the technology either on a per unit or per program basis, and then there's ongoing services fees depending on what we're doing and what the service looks like.
Thanks, Stephen. Zane is in the back corner here.
That was incredibly smooth of him, right? To just like a true creative guy to ditch the business entirely. I like that. Look, I think in reality, we're in the earliest days, right? We've been in the earliest days of interactive television now for 15, 20 years, and I have a feeling that we might that it might stay. But what's really important and the game changer is really the web services that now make up people's lives. And what I mean by that is like the eBay accounts, the Amazon accounts, the iTunes accounts, the fabric of e-commerce has actually been woven into what people already do. And so a lot of what I think the business model is stitching those things together. The billions of dollars of transactions that are already happening on the internet and the passive viewing experience need to come together. And it's as simple as that. So in terms of a business model, we've been in business, we founded the company in 2006. Our business model has been to do as much engineering as possible to pay for the creation of the database. Because we believe that ultimately the database is key to unlocking the value, or to use less marketing speak, that the database, that knowing the context of a moment of video is critical to knowing what web services, what money generating web services are relevant to that moment in time. And so, who asked the business model question? So ultimately I think the business model is to connect the emotional viewing experience with the traditional awareness to purchase funnel, and to find ways that content owners can be compensated, right? That the show creators and content owners can be compensated for their role in driving the purchase funnel. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think it's still not fixed. What you're saying is you're still searching for a good way in order
What do you do? I'll tell you what the business model is for you.
I'm in the app space, so I think that this can be successful if there's a good model behind it, where every of those parties get a piece of the cake, especially then the content providers, I think.
So
And I was quite curious how far you are in.
So for an app developer, it's an SDK, right? So probably at no cost, right? Because to drive an application development environment, it's an SDK, and then from there, it's really what program content are you looking for? So we license the data for different applications, but ultimately we work for the content owner, and so our job is to bring the content owner's metadata approved for exploitation on different platforms.
I think we're starting this, well, not to hit it too hard on the business side, but we're starting to see the first business models like from Twitter where they're able to monetize the fire hose based on providing access to that data. And there's certain applications that can hit it for free, and then they'll pass a gate and there'll start to be some nominal charge. So check back with us next year.
So I got two real quick questions.
Sure.
One is, in this specific app,
Uh-huh.
eBay is doing a search from the metadata, right?
That is
So it's
right.
not necessarily that you're going to get the exact shirt. You're going to get a shirt that is the
Right.
best eBay
Right,
search
and
for.
remember, we're doing that
Yep.
part where we're catching up to real time. If there was real product integration or product placement, there could literally be specific things that we knew were available at that time.
Right.
And
And
we
then,
even have, these guys could even take the actual shirt that was on the
We do a
screen
lot of
and
shopping
resell that.
directly from major print labels, so actually you could get the exact one.
and the second one is, how much work is it for the content provider to get the metadata into RCDb?
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
right now it's less work than what we're doing, because seriously, we are just having everything in a wardrobe that is like the size of this room, 4 layers up, and we have to go pull things out if somebody asks us what shirt was that broke the war. And it's just people's institutional memory, and what we're finding now is that there's a lot of retroactive sales that we never imagined. I mean, people are buying DVDs of episode 1 and they're asking for tags. So there's going to be work, but assuming that the RCDB thing is sort of, let's say, a white label product, we can come in, and when we do our post-production, everybody's still in the show. We just made the show, we shoot the show 5 days in advance, very close. So people are still going to remember exactly every prop, every piece of furniture, every brand of the sheets, every whole thing, and then we can label it instantly, knowing that in some years, we'll be able to resell a lot of this. Or that CBS will probably pay for some of this information, because we could say to CBS, by the way, actually everybody's wearing J. Crew all week. Go to J. Crew, and CBS would pay us a lot of money for that.
So they pay you and then you pay, so that was, who owns the database, the content of the database? Do you guys own that, or do you own that?
They own what they own, we own what we own. It's a little tricky because, this foundation data, like, it depends on what the deal is. I mean, if we work with the Bold and Beautiful, it turns out they don't want to use any of that. They just want to layer their data in. Then that's maybe what's possible. But most cases, we're going to own a layer, which is like what we call foundation, and then the content owner, if they layer in their own metadata, they maintain ownership.
Like in this project, for example, we pulled 5 recent episodes, and independent of Christina and the team, we actually identified products across all those shows. They were sometimes generic, because it was hard to tell. I mean, the people are generic, the stories are generic. It's no big surprise the products are somewhat generic. But then in concert with their props and wardrobe people, we went back on that raw time data and kind of added a level of detail to it. So at a foundation level, like in the 2000 movies that we haven't collaborated with the sets and props and wardrobe people. We've actually just said, there's a bag of Fritos and there's a bottle of scotch, and that's a Geo Metro, and actually kind of put it in along with the scene breaks and the actors that we identified. And it's not based on the script, it's not based on the closed captioning, and so that scene definition, along with the product and actors that we keep referring to as foundation, actually is RCDB intellectual property that just lives as foundation data in the database that then can be added on top of with various layers of more valuable metadata. Yeah. Yes.
So if I'm in the e-commerce site, and if I want your content from Bold and Beautiful, do I buy that from you, or do I buy that from RCDB, or do I buy that from Gracenote? How would that work?
So that's when you
We compete with eBay, we're in different regions. How
You
would
mean the
that?
product itself?
No, in terms of your catalog. In
The
terms
web
of
service, I think, is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
yeah
There's a simple
well
way to answer that. You do the business deal with them. We work for the content owner. So you do the business deal with the content owner, and we're the enabler. Oh, there you are. So the business deal with the content owner, right? You say, I want to leverage that metadata in some way. And then the content owner figures out how much you'll pay for it. And then they pay us in providing that service, enabling them to exploit their metadata through another channel with you.
So basically, we would release the time data feed for the show to you as a second developer, but it'd be under the control of the people that own the IP.
And now that you guys own 2,000 libraries, or
Yeah, we're doing like 70 movies a week right now.
Okay. So instead of me going through each of the shows, is there a different model where I can go through an RCDB or Gracenote or whoever it is that's capturing all this data, buy it from a single source, and then just put it into a pool?
We'll get there.
It depends on the level of data you want, right? The level of detail.
It's all bespoke at this point, right? Because we're early enough in the game so that it needs to be bespoke. But yes, ultimately that's the idea. You as a service provider open up your web control panel and you look and see, okay, of the shows that I have my eyeballs exposed to, which of those can be activated today with an enhanced experience, right? Through a common API and with an SDK that you have familiarity with. That's exactly how it works.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah, just quick, I think it's really cool, and I can imagine in the future it all being available from one provider. So, I mean, I can see that happening. One of the questions I have around this manual entry of metadata is, can you just talk about the scalability and let's say the hours, the man hours needed per hour of programming?
Yeah, I mean, it's an evolving art and science. The first 900 titles were the top 30 box office movies of the last 30 years. And so on top of that, there's a couple of ways to move forward. There's a combination of very basic machine process. There's also a group of people about 2 blocks from here who are getting paid to watch movies and TV shows. And it's really that jump from kind of the bulk machine data that can identify shots or screen bakes or maybe even some level of facial recognition into what we think is more valuable, higher quality data. When we make a scene definition, it's literally a person who's making an educated decision about what constitutes a coherent scene. We've seen some metadata that's been generated automatically where all of us are in this room, then a shot changes from the other side and it renames all the people that are there. Well, in reality, none of us actually changed, or the products didn't change. So it's an evolving art. There's actually
you're
both
using computer vision to kind of aid the process.
yeah, it's
metadata
multiple
in
paths, right? So there's actually some offshore teams, there's some machine vision, but ultimately it's all QA'd in an interface like what I showed there, and a lot of value gets added at that part.
And we've been doing the same thing with commercials,
Ah.
where we can figure out where commercials are, but then we have to hand curate it at some
Right.
point, because the tools are only so good, right?
Right. So we're investing in that, and I think there are some indications that it will scale. Next question.
What's your approach to live television?
Like sports, you mean? In the fullness of time, we think that there'll be basically like a showrunner app. And there'll ultimately be an opportunity, I think, to insert live events. And by events, I mean the kinds of stats, polls, quizzes, or factoids that we've kind of come to know as TV. The full end-to-end platform tool set's still being developed right now. I think there are some players in the sports metadata space that are actually getting pretty good at live. And so ultimately, our value may be more in catalog and library programming, going up to first run. But right now, actual live's not RCDb's focus.
I was just going to add, so on sports, we also think that you can get pretty good data just from program guide information from a TMS or a Rovi to get kind of top level, right? Who are the teams playing? What's the league? And then what will be interesting is when we get to time sync, Kobe Bryant's shooting. So let's show a Bryant jersey versus some other Laker, apparel. But I think we can start with program listings for sports.
Curious, this apply for Christine, for Marc. What are some ways you're making the viewer aware that this application exists?
It doesn't exist yet.
Okay, sorry, jumping in.
It's
a prototype.
Are we making aware?
Yeah,
I mean,
put that in the future tense,
Yeah, I mean,
thanks.
for us, we own our show, we're an independent producer, but we sell it to CBS.
Mhm.
So what we would do is bring in CBS, because obviously they've got the biggest platform. And there would be, going back to the business question, we'd have to work that out, how that would work, what kind of partnership there is between our show and eBay and CBS. Well, there's a natural partnership there because it's the viewers and they're shopping. And then ideally, if CBS were interested, they would tag it. We have a stream at the bottom of our show where we promote various things. We do get 3 million viewers every day on air. We have an undisclosed number because CBS won't disclose it, so I'm assuming it's at least 500,000 people at CBS.com same day. And again, we could tag it there, and that's more viewers than most people will be able to deliver for anything. So the answer is we would bring in our major broadcast partner.
Makes sense.
And about a third of iPad users have downloaded our app. So one possibility is to add it as a feature to our core iPad app.
Okay.
But we're also talking to MSOs and other providers to see if we can have a Watch with eBay feature distributed.
Cool.
Couple more questions. Yes?
How receptive are the content owners in giving you their content so you can create these databases?
Well, I think there's two ways to go about it, right? The top 30 box office for the last 30 years is actually done independently of the collaboration of the people that own that IP. I think the more valuable partnerships moving forward would be in concert with them, and I think the short answer is they're fascinated and eager to participate. But it's really kind of the first pilot apps that we're showing about what the user experience could be that I think will ultimately be the differentiator that will create the bigger line at the door. You can imagine a level of metadata that's actually not the show creators, it's not the people that actually even show them, but it might be a distributor, for example. We did a pilot prototype with Mad Men with the folks at AMC that broadcast it. And they employed a team of bloggers that watch the show and know everything about it. So it wasn't that we were working with Matt Weiner. It wasn't that we were working with Lionsgate that owns and licensed the show. It's that we're actually able to add value at the time data level, even with somebody that has distribution window rights. So figuring out where we can get the most traction. Ultimately, I think it goes back to the program creators. And what the RCDb platform does is, I think, start to posit an economy of value around things that currently they're just giving away, right? It's like Christina licenses her show to CBS. She never even thought that she could monetize that across multiple platforms by doing this frame level metadata investment early on. So it's a little chicken and egg or cart before horse right now. But ultimately, I think the people that make the shows will be able to extract the most value across all the distribution points.
It is important to note that those, and you should speak up, but for the content owners, at least, we find the content owners are not quite ready for this. It's a pretty big shift for them. You know, they're focused on creating the primary content for them, which is the show, let alone a bunch of additional stuff that's going to go into second stream applications. So, you know, we've done the Grey's Anatomy application with ABC. It's been widely used. There's a lot of work that goes into all the additional content that's delivered there every single week, and they've been great about providing it, but it's a big change for them in terms of how they approach the creation of content for the show and how they think about creating content that may live beyond the show for a long time.
Well, you should also think about all the other things they have to be concerned with in terms of their deliverables.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
it's just, amazing the amount that they have to deal with right now.
Yeah,
So.
the key thing too is that if they don't do it though, if they don't participate in creating their own content,
Someone else
what's happening is that other people are doing it for
Yeah,
them.
because that comment about the bloggers, that would drive us crazy, to answer your point. I think eventually, everybody will take it in-house. The easier it is for us, the easier it is, like, not white label in that, we're gonna buy it for cheap, but white label in that we get the format, it's half computer recognized, we can correct it, that's a lot easier. As the framework comes in, and yeah, you'll see a lot of kickback, and if somebody runs around and tries to do it with the network or with a blogger, that'll be the end. So I think they're all going to eventually embrace it. We're all understaffed. We all produce shows 5 or 6 days before they air. But not all of this has to be live. That's the other thing with this Watch with eBay Live. It doesn't have to be live at all. We could roll it out in the beginning and say, if you want to know what's on the show, watch it on CBS.com. We can tag it in 2 weeks afterwards, which would make CBS delighted because it will get people to go to their website. So we could build in ways as everybody learns the system to ramp it up so it works for everybody.
Or
And I think that that's every producer that I know.
Or as I was going to say with the Gracenote ACR, it's like pop in your old DVD collection, enable that as well. So.
Ooh, trick. Hey, any other questions? We're almost out of time. I know I saw some hands.
Well,
Yes.
it's sort of an ROI question, which is, everybody hinted at there's a services model or a flat licensing model, but there's a startup cost. I mean, like the elephant in the room is, has anybody launched this? No. Okay, but it looks awesome, so we hope it goes well. well. I'd like to know what the success was. I didn't realize it wasn't live, but
Yeah.
what's the cost, startup cost and run cost for thousands of people? I mean, nobody probably wants to talk about it, but I'll ask anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pilot project in
And
general.
we've got launched applications in the market today. They're not leveraging the RCDb platforms. They don't have that granular time-based information. And obviously, there's cost around the capture and creation of that content layer that you just heard about. But we've got applications in the market today. One with the Weather Channel, one with Grey's Anatomy, more to come. I think the content creators are looking at it two ways. One, it's about stickiness and delighting their consumers and expanding and extending their brand. So they look at it as a branding and marketing expense to some degree. And then the second piece of that is if you're able to bring a commerce layer in, which is really what we're showing here today, that's incremental revenue stream that you never had before. So that's found money in a lot of ways for the content creators. Yes, there's startup costs, you got to factor that in, but it hasn't cost us more than it costs us to create any other application in terms of the infrastructure and technology that we've had to build. Yes, back-end services, lots of costs there, but you look at those long-term, amortize that over many, many years and many customers.
I think the beyond the stickiness and the ability to do T-commerce, right? We talk to some partners that see that screen as beachfront property for advertising as well. So advertising and sponsorship will also pay to float the boat. It's like I've got as many interstitial commercials as I can in the linear broadcasts. Like you've just given me, new real estate.
I can't help but comment on the business model question. I'm sorry, who asked that? Who was that?
The guy next to the wheel.
I think especially at a conference like this, it's an opportunity for us to really say it together, which is no one knows, right? No one knows. And not only that, we're not going to know until we crack the user experience around it. I think that's what's exciting about this particular TVOT group is that we're mostly makers here, right? We're mostly people that are somehow challenged with making the stuff, getting it out there, and figuring out the business enough so that it's not, a total pipe dream. But ultimately, no one knows, and what it comes down to is cracking the user experience, right? And we feel that after so many years of trying to do the best damn interfaces we could on TV, that the opportunity is mobile. Really, that the opportunity is you get it off the TV. Like, don't mess with people there, right? They really don't want it there. They've been telling us that for years, and we keep trying to what about if it's only there when you press the button? It's like, well, they don't really want it. They don't really want interactivity in their TVs. That's what we hear, right? But now we know, and I think Marc's from eBay's numbers, when he talks about the growth of what they're seeing, the pure volume of revenue, right? Climbing by billions of dollars a year. It's like, that's kind of a wake-up sign, right? So it's like, if the interactivity is on the tablets, if the interactivity is on the smartphones, and it's related to the shows, right? What we need to do is crack that user experience. If you're watching a show, do you really want to be sitting here watching this other thing competing with it? No. So figuring out from a creative perspective what is complementary, figuring out from a creative perspective what is, obnoxious and annoying. And so I think it's really a dedication, like RCDb is truly dedicated to the development process, right? It's about supporting developers to create new user experiences. And so we're investing, and I think everyone's investing in what are those user experiences and what might they be. So I just, because I know people go, oh, that all looks really cool, but how's it going to make money? Well, no one knows. And you have to crack the user experience to know if you're going to make money.
Absolutely. I think we have a hint, though, today.
Well, I just wanted to say,
Yes.
for those of us who've been in ITV for a long time, 15 years ago it was Jennifer Aniston's sweater from Friends, and you guys have gotten so much closer to buying that sweater.
Now it's Jim Parsons'
you're almost
Volcom's
there.
t-shirt.
Well, and what is it? And so, because I worked on those demos, right? I was a 22-year-old kid making demos for the DCT 2000, right? Like the future, the DCT 2000 was going to do it all. Right? And so the number one thing you need, or the one lesson we've extracted from it, is it's about context. You need to know the context of the video in order to be able to do any kind of user experience or business model around it. And that's why we dedicated ourselves to a database of the context of what's going on.
All right, everybody. Thank you, Christina, Marc, Steven, Doug. Great job. we have a table, so we're running these demos. Happy to talk to you guys. Really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.